A very good morning, students. I'm Dr. Erum Fatima from the Department of Languages, English. Today I have come to you with lecture 5, and in this we will cover the topic self-concept and communication. So today we'll cover self-concept and communication, self-talk, self-reflection. Along with this, we'll also cover Freudian concept of self, which is id, ego, superego. Then we will also do Johari window and SWOT analysis. So let us just start with the topic. Self-concept. Now first let us understand what self-concept is all about. So when we say self-concept, it is an individual's perception of who we are and what we are. And also, it is actually, let me just get back. So it is a perception of the self. It actually means that, how much of the self is a product of one's own making and how much of it is constructed, which is based on, how others react to us. So it has to do with how we represent ourselves to others and also how others, they see us as. So it is basically based on, self-concept is based on, the self. The self-esteem and self-presentation. So it has to do with the way the person thinks, the abilities, the different abilities that they have, and the facets. It has to do with various facets of one's life, which has to do with not just academics, the social life, the interactions that we have, with people about us, and so it is also has to do with broader understanding. It has to do with self-assessment, and self-assessment again is a part of who we are, the positives, the negatives, the strengths, the weaknesses, the physical, emotional, intellectual, functional, dimensions that keeps changing, over a period of time. So we can say that self-concept is the ability, that how well that we can function in a society as of now as human beings. And because if we do not function well, in all its in all its perspectives and in totality, then it can always affect us physically, mentally, and we can have various health issues. So we have to be very careful. We have to have a constructive and create a very constructive self-concept. So again, to be able to understand a little better, see here, there's an image of a cat, and when the cat looks into the mirror, the cat is seeing, what is the cat seeing? The cat is in the form of a lion. So it depends, this is to do with self-awareness. How are we, looking ourselves as? So there's this real self, there is this actual self, and there's this ought self. So who we are we, the real self is the real, in actuality, who we are, the real us. Then there's an ideal self. Ideal self is the self that the others would want us to see as. And the ought self, the ought is the actual self that we should be, with all the positives and the negative traits that we have, and then we also recognize those traits and accept us the way that we are. So it has to do with all the experiences. All the self-concept is constructed basically on the experiences, all our past experiences, all our life events that has taken place, the incidents, the present incidents that's taking place, the stages of the life that we are in, who we are an academician, we are, who we are, like researchers, we are professors, administrators, students, so this is a kind of a development of self-awareness and building, ourselves, the knowledge that we need to have, and to knowledge that we need to have about ourselves and need to empower ourselves with all the positives. And also, it also has to do with the feedback. Feedback is very important when we talk about self-concept. So it is, of course, how we view ourselves, who we are. So who we are, has various manifestations. And definitely who we are slowly changes, as the life that as we are leading our life, it slowly, it changes. Slowly we mature as individuals, and as we change, as we mature, we there are certain changes, that is brought about in our lives and also in our personality. So it is the, overall picture of ourselves. What is it that we are inside, and this is the image of ourselves. What is the image? What is it that we would want to see ourselves as? That is actual self concept. How do we want to be recognized? Who we are? What we believe, we would like to be as a person, and what also we would believe that the other people should also think about us. So it goes both ways. Self concept has to do with how I want to be recognized as a person, and how I would also want the others to recognize me as. So now let us understand the dimensions. What is self-concept and what is its dimension? So dimensions has to do with self-knowledge. Self-knowledge actually is, the very pertinent question that comes is, who am I? मैं क्या हूँ? Then there's an expectation. There's a self-expectation. What I really want to be. I have certain aims, I have certain objectives, I have certain goals. What do I want to become in this life? Then the social self, how I am perceived by others, how others understand me, who am I, in the face of others. And self-evaluation has to do with how well, do I like myself? How much do I like myself? Do I really like myself? These are the questions that, we need to answer to ourselves. And then dimensions of self-concept has to do with the actual self, of course. Then we have the ideal self, then we have the social self, and then the ideal social self. So actual self is how I actually see myself. Actual is the real, the actual person that we really are, and the way that we project ourselves. Then the ideal self is how I would like to see myself as. Now there can be certain aspirations, there can be certain goals in my life. So that is the ideal self. Then there's a social self, how others would want to see me as. Then ideal social self is how I would like others to see. There's a difference. How others see me and how I would like. So there is a gap between the actual, the ideal, the social, and the ideal social self. So this gap needs to be filled in. We need to fill in these gaps and really move from the actual self to the ideal self, from social self to ideal social self, so that people start accepting us, so that people start really, we have a positive framework, and we have a positive personality, and obviously everybody needs to be liked and needs to be accepted. So obviously we need to fill in the gap and reach to the ideal self, to the ideal social self, to be accepted in the society. Self-knowledge. What is self-knowledge? Self-concept is another term for self-knowledge, and self-knowledge is again a dimension of self-concept. So it's basically a global term, and it has to do with all the qualities that we have, all the traits that we have, the image that we create of ourselves, and the image that we create and hold about ourselves to the others. And it has to do with the age, it has to do with the gender, the male, the female, the occupation that we are in, the background that we come from, all our sexual orientations and our position in society. See, self-knowledge is that we need to be aware of these things, who we are and from where we come from. And it also has to do with our moods. We need to really be aware of the kind of the typical behaviors that we manifest, the feelings that we have, the various kind of moods that we display, and the qualities that we have. Probably we could be sometimes hot-headed, we could be ambitious, we could be intelligent, we could different characteristics and traits that we sort of exemplify. So that is what that awareness of the self, awareness of and the knowledge that we have about ourselves is actually self-knowledge. And this is one of the very important dimensions of self-concept. Self-expectation. So what is self-expectation? Is a part of definitely self-concept. So it has to do with expectations for the self, and it comes from so many sources. It has to, our family has self-expectation just does not has to do with the expectations that we have that from ourselves, but it also develops very, it is a part of the unconscious being, and it starts very early from a childhood days, image, the role playing that we do, and our parents are the role models, and what do they, we copy and we imitate our parents. So what is it that our parents want us to do, what expectations that our family has of us, what expectation the society has from us, so it has to have a cultural backing, it has to have a backing from the family, and also at the same time the entire sum total experiences that we have consciously throughout our growing up, the formative years, to such point that we become adults. Self expectation is a it's a cultural, it has to do with family, it has to do with culture, it has to do with who we are and from where we come from. Then self evaluation is, self esteem is very important. When we evaluate ourselves, it has to do with the judgment that we pass upon ourselves. How do we look ourselves as? Self-esteem has to do with how we kind of recognize ourselves to be, because it has to do with the whether I have to need to label myself as being good or bad, positive or negative, whether the certain things are desirable, certain things are undesirable. So it gives us the clues. Self evaluation always gives us the clues about ourselves, about yourself. And so as Maslow's subsets of esteem's needs, self-esteem has to do with your strength, it has to do with your achievements. So it has to do with your mastery, your competence, the qualities that you possess. Obviously, if you've had you're the recipient of any award, and you've made some great achievements in life, obviously it's going to boost up your self-esteem, and then obviously it will have positive connotations, and if it is going to affect not just your life, but the way that you communicate. It will boost up your morale, it will motivate you, it will lend confidence in your life, and definitely improve your behavior, improve your perceptions, your competencies, and you will definitely perform better in life. And obviously respect the need for self-esteem always comes from the respect that we kind of gain from the others, the respect that we have for ourselves and the respect that we gain from others. So obviously it's a kind of a judgment that people make about our abilities and the way that we perform a certain task. So obviously it's a very important part. So what are the components? Again, we talk about the identity, we talk about body image, we talk about self-esteem, we talk about role performance. Now here, when we say self-concept, here it actually means that it comes to identity, self-identity. Self-identity is who we are. So we need to be very confident here. We need to be very successful. See, this is how that we need to identify ourselves, with certain qualities. So what are the certain qualities? We need to be educated. We need to be relaxed. We need to be creative. We need to be kind. We need to be determined. We need to be honest. We need to be worthy. There's so many qualities there. So that is, one defining quality of our identity. Then body image. Now the present culture, the culture that we have in the present scenario is definitely, has to do with the culture of lack. So, the present scenario always instill in us, the culture instill in us that we lack certain thing. There's a slim and trim culture that we have around us. So, when we see people around us, we see beautiful people around us. So we feel that probably, we are not so beautiful, we are not so glamorous. So body image is a very important part, and obviously we don't, at the same time, we feel that we are not, good enough. So this leads to self-presentation and how we present us. So body image has to do with how we present our body, and how we present ourselves and how we reveal ourselves. And so we have to build a very positive image, and because once we have a positive image, obviously it will boost up our self-esteem and our role performance, who we are. If we are, supposedly you're a student, that the roles, exactly, you have to have the awareness of the kind of roles that you need to perform in the society, in the family, the expectations, how you're going to influence others. Obviously See, there's always an interrelation between the various components of the self concept. So the interdependence could be like self. When we talk about body image, we need to have a positive body image. With positive body image, we have a positive self esteem. When the self esteem is positive, it boosts up our self esteem. Then definitely we'll perform better roles. We'll be more positive in the society, and definitely we'll definitely create a better identity for ourselves and who we are and what we are. And of course we'll be able to kind of do a better assessment of ourselves and be able to recognize our skills, our abilities, and obviously which will lead to self-efficacy. So identity is again important. It has to do with name, gender, ethnic identity, your family status, your occupation. Then body image, again, that again is, if I repeat here again, is like the physical attributes, characteristics, your appearance, and the way that the body changes over a period of time, and how well that we can accept our body. Self-ideal is the perception or the behavior based on our personal standards and the expectations that we have about ourselves, and the family also have about ourselves. And this needs to be regulated internally, how well that we can respect ourselves. And role refers to the kind of expected behaviors, the familial, the cultural, the social roles that we need to perform in the society. So positive and negative self-concept. So we have to have once we have a positive self-concept, definitely we'll be very motivated, to do something positive in life, and we'll be confident. We'll have a happy life, and we'll be able to face with all the challenges. And if we have negative self-concept, then obviously we'll lack motivation, we can lack confidence, and we'll not be meeting new people, we'll avoid meeting new people and social interactions, and we'll be very anxious, we'll have certain fears and apprehensions, we'll be very unhappy, and it can bring about a lot of health conflicts. So we have to be very careful here. So expanding and changing the self-concept is very important, that we need to kind of have trusted friends and people around us whom we can trust, and evaluate ourselves, and we have to come out of all the notions, the wrong and the misunderstood notions that we have about ourselves. And now we have to carefully interact with the right people, have to have right relation. Even in organizations, talking about, we need to speak of the self. We can have a self-disclosure with the right kind of people. We have to have open relationships. So obviously it is very attainable. All your wants, all your needs, you can always pen it down. We can have it in our mind, and we can work towards it. All the goals are attainable. We need to know our strengths and weaknesses and be able to perform on them. We need to have positive relations and recognize who we really are, and then we can accomplish everything that we want in life. Self-talk now. What is self-talk? Self-talk has to do, actually, when we talk about self-talk, this is a kind of an internal dialogue, So this is an internal dialogue that we make, that a person, when a person feels good about themselves, a person can use, positive self-talk. And obviously it has to do with your optimism. It has to do with how well motivated that you are. And when you look at the brighter sides of the thing, is very important. And this is an inner stream of consciousness, inner dialogue, and your moods and your emotions really make a lot of difference. So it has to do with your rationality, your thinking mind, your logical mind. You have to train your mind. You have to be very specific, very conditioned. You have to accept your failures and dramatically change the failures into positive feedbacks, and you have to take step to change your failures into victories. Then obviously automaticity is extensive repetition creates highly automatic thoughts. So it has to do with the thoughts that we need to have. So like repetitive thought needs to be, so obviously it's a self-talk is a two-edged sword. So when we examine our performance, we need to be constantly, tell ourselves and believe in our self-worth, in our abilities, and we have to keep, saying positive talks to ourselves that yes, I can do it, I'm very good at it. Then of course self-talk's pattern is that that we have certain, like, definitely it really helps in the sports area, and to the sportsmen, because it helps them to mentally train their mind. It gives them, the technical performance improves, when it comes to sportsmen. If they are constantly indulging in self-talks, it gives you positive affirmations, not just to the sports person but anybody as for that matter, working in any environment, any scenario. It gives you the goals, the positive goals that we need to, create for ourselves. And once we have the goals, we'll always make efforts, to enhance and to, strive towards those goals. Appraisals are important, because obviously there could be situations we need to have positive appraisals, and so that we can, any threats are there, any challenging situations are there, through self talk we can, reprogram our lives and always try to grow and do away with all the threats, and take care of the opportunities. Attributions is reasons and explain. We need to explain, why did we fail, why. So if we get success, we accept the success, but if we fail, we need to like really reason out, we have to indulge. So self talk is a very self affirmation process, and we should all indulge in this, because obviously it will, encourage the performers to always perform better and to accept the failures in life and to control our lives, to have whatever efforts that we can make and whatever abilities that we have. So we need to be like really really prepared in our lives. So it's like a habit formation, so once we have the habit of self talk, we can always improve in our lives, and then cue words are there. So cue words are reminders, it keeps telling you that we have to be, during practices and during competitions that we have to face in life, the cue words would always remind us that we have to be oriented, we have to be focused, we have to facilitate performance. That is what, that we are performers and we are here to perform, and all negative thoughts has to be kept away. We have to enhance our focus and elevate our motivation and do away with all the stress and boost our self confidence is very important, and develop all the skills that we have, work upon our skills, like the way that, for example, athletes are always very focused on their performance, and they work 12 hours a day, and they develop their skills and improve their performance. So we have to be the best critic of ourselves, and so the critic always blames you, we need to blame ourselves if we fall short of anything. If we are not perfect, in our work, we need to, develop perfection. And so we need to be the best critics of our lives, and we can call ourselves stupid, and we can call ourselves untalented and weak and selfish. So obviously it is a reminder to the self that yes, I am this, I'm this, and I'm this, and I need to work upon my negativity, the negative traits, so the critique in your life is always should be there, and it should always keep checking you, right? So the negative there's always negative in every human being. So what are the things that hurts you, what are the things that hits you, so where is your areas where your self-esteem is low, so you have to work upon it. You have to do away with all the bored life, the frustrations, the threats that you might just come across from varied areas. So obviously do away with the negative thoughts and stop using any intense cues, like any kinesthetic movements, like snapping a rubber band, some kind of snapping your fingers, or there are so many movements that we make, and which we like biting your nails, and we show that we are nervous. So you have to do away with all the negative stream of consciousness, and have to develop a positive you. This is very